G'day and welcome. I wasn't really going to release a video on this car yet because it's not finished. It's in a good healthy running state and all that sort of stuff. I've just got to finish some panel work and bits and pieces. This is the XC Fairmont GXL as I bought it at Ray's shop in Bayswater. The car had a really good pedigree. It was a 302 4-speed manual. It was sweet cream with an Acre interior, power steering of course, which is standard, and 4-wheel disc brakes and limited slip differential. That's all stock. But it also had air conditioning, electric windows, and long range fuel tank, factory dual exhaust, all this sort of stuff. And you can see, look at the firewall there with the damage where the welding is. This guy had tried to street machine it, I think. He tried to smooth out the engine bay, and in the process of doing that had started removing paint with a grinder instead of using a floppy disk or paint stripper, and thinned everything out. Now when I looked at this car, the first thing I was looking for was rust. And then the second thing I was looking for is whether or not it was straight, and it was straight and pretty rust free. There wasn't much rust at all, but it was what, that's a telltale of the rear vent. It's what the previous owner did to it that just left it in such a mess. I, on reflection, should have walked away from it. I paid about $1,000 I think for the shell. Given that it was a Fairmont GXL with a pretty good set of options, none of it was with the car. It just came as a shell like that. Originally I was looking for an XA Falcon, and I had a 390 big block, and I wanted to get a 4-speed top loader and make it into sort of a mock Falcon 500 Police Interceptor, but I found this one. XA's BCs are pretty thin on the ground to find a good restorable one. A lot of them are either completely rusted out or people want $1 million. But anyway, I grabbed this. This is 4 years ago today, or almost today, and started on a restoration. So it is a bit previous, but I hope you enjoy. And here's our XC up for restoration. This is just a body shell, and you can see it's really down in condition. Some of the welding was really average, no penetration, really messy work done previously. Speaker holes have been cut out, that structure, so it's not roadworthy, so we have to do something with that. This is about the only thing on the car that was at fault, the drip rails. That was the car's fault. The rest of it was the previous owner, and I'll show you some of that work now. Of course, the windscreen surrounds and that part of the top there was in pretty good condition. And of course we got this business. The firewall had been ground down with a disc to remove paint and made it paper thin. And of course they hadn't used patches. They just tried to fill the whole thing in with a MIG welder, which is absolutely terrible. And a lot of that just broke away when I tried to get it out. The holes were all knackered as well. Here's a shot of the cross member, cracks in it, and it's all bent up. That had to all be cut out and completely replaced, and a lot of parts came from Jason Hill. Look at the cast rod housing. That had actually been heated up after it was filled. A shabby old dash was supplied with the car. I didn't end up using that. And here's another area here showing where the slave cylinder goes for the clutch, or the master for the clutch goes. Car came with a limited slip differential, which was correct for it, but it was a drum brake one. These cars came standard with 4 disc brakes. And of course the sill was all crushed up there where somebody lifted the car, I assume with a hoist, and crushed all that sill, so I had to repair that as well. Another view, some of the holes that have been butchered, and of course we're on to the engine of choice we're going to use now, which is a lovely little 351 Cleveland. I had that engine for probably 10 years before I rebuilt it. It looks like this has been cut out. Maybe they put a top loader in or something, I don't know. Going back to the standard wheels, these are XC Fairmont GXL XD gear. Picked these up, I think about $42 or something off eBay. And of course this shows a little bit more of the work that was done, MIG wire poking through and lots of filler all over the place. One hole I need for the bloody fuel line, but what's quite interesting is the fact that they've filled that in with the fuel line still there. You know, judging by the condition of everything in it, there's the sills, or the plenum chain, which haven't vacuumed out, it's absolutely spotless, and around the screen's perfect. They've sacrificed the idler arm and cut that off, which is no big deal, but they've also cut the drag link before it gets to the pitman arm, so that's just all trash. Take that off. can see those threads are lovely, and I've seen them sort of scalloped out. Well, this is where having a good supply is really important, because you look after them, they're going to look after you. And I bought a whole lot of stuff that I don't need yet, but it was there, it was available, and it was dirt cheap. Now the first thing I got, of course, with the power steering type, or the double groove balancer pulley and water pump pulley. I had a single groove one, so we just swapped those. So that's a win. AM radio in surround. It looks like it's never been used, and of course all the plugs are intact and everything. So original knobs, everything like that. So that's all good. Of course the clock with the mandatory milky lens, which I can do something with, and also surround. And that was virtually nothing. And again, it's got the proper connector and all that sort of stuff on it. Needed a wiper motor, so the guy gave me two. Ray gave me two, and they're both XC ones. He goes, just pick the best of them. So that's good. What else? Padded glove box, which is all good. And I'll get that lock coated to the boot lock. It's broken a bit there, but it doesn't matter. The map light sort of goes there, so that's cool. And that padding's in brilliant condition. These get wrinkly after a while, so that's a very, very good one. This is a good one. This is an ashtray, and again, he just chucked it in. Now, this ashtray has never been used. There's no evidence of cigarettes ever being in there, and the cigarette lighter is brand new. Doesn't look like it's ever been used. So that's a win. That one I'm very, very pleased with. We've also got this lovely console. It's an automatic one, which I can modify from manual. It's broken at the ear there, but no breakages inside the bin, which is cool. And of course the other part I got was this heater box. This is a non-air conditioned type of heater box. Whoops, non-air conditioned type of heater box. Looks like it's been in a paddock bomb or something. It doesn't matter. That was virtually nothing. It cost very, very little. And I need it so I can see exactly what holes I need for mounts. Some of these are being butchered. Even that bracket there with the carbon canister mounts on the other side's all been ground off. So I started hooking into the rust repairs. This is the bottom part of the drip rail that sort of folds underneath or into the front of the C-pillar. The car metal itself was good. It was just this bit that was gone. So I could fabricate that quite easily on a folder and put the new bit in. No problem with that whatsoever. On the other side there was a small hole just around there which I had to fill, but that was all good. Jason Hill had an XB. He gave me the radiator support. Just cut off what you want. I was very careful taking the bottom caster rod, or the bottom of the caster rod off to put on my car so I could return the radiator support to him. That was before he got his ZF Fairlane, so it's a good thing because he ended up using that radiator support on the ZF restoration he's doing at the moment. Right, so here we have a nice cleaned up parcel tray section. A little bit of straightening to do just here, just a tiny little bit there. But all the reinforcements out. And on the car I've sort of cut this piece out here, we'll see that bit there. But I can drill these parts out in the car and just cut it sort of here somewhere and lay this over against the original bracing. And then I can mark exactly where the old spot welds were. And I've just taken out this section here. And that way I can drop this in like that. I can weld all this up all along here. You can see I've got a huge hole out of the firewall here, and part of the reason for that is because of where it's been ground. I'm not sure if you can see there's a little hole there, and that's where he's ground down too thin, and that was the story right the way around it. And of course here's the other side, so that is a mess. But I've taken out all his dodgy work. Some of this was paper thin, and also some very, very important holes are blocked up. And so here's the part here, and of course they've blocked in the speedo hole, which is ridiculous. I don't know why they've done that. This is off an XB Falcon. Again, this is Jason's. And just that'll give me an idea of where the original one was. I'm not going to do the top because I've already done that. And of course we can just lift it off, and I know to give myself a good wide berth of where that line is. One more, just there. There we go, that's the bit I need. Perfect. It's got the right size hole and the studs and everything, so I can use that in the XC. A bit blotchy because it's just got edge primer on it. Edge primer never looks very good. Just protects it from rusting. Pardon me, getting surface rust on it, like this sort of thing. Sort of had to weld right the way around it to make sure it's all kosher. And of course, the parcel tray's in now. I have screwed up a little bit in this area. It's a little bit of a rise there, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it. I'm pretty happy indeed. Of course, with this little bit of paint over, I can say, rightio, that's done. Don't have to worry about it. Given that I'm not a huge fan of doing bodywork, that sort of thing, I decided to crack the engine out and have a look. These are reconditioned cylinder heads for a 351 Cleveland, 4V valves and hardened valve seats, all this sort of stuff. I had no money and Susie bought them for me. Again, there it is there. Again, I'd had them for some time before I started undertaking this. And of course the block looked peachy, that's the crank, but later you'll probably see in this, this was full of cracks, the actual crankshaft. The block was good, but the crank was defective. So it was ended up being a letterbox stand for someone, I guess. Just pulling it apart to see what's there and just start getting that stuff underway. More parts, a power steering box, nicely recode. Didn't need a changeover because the guy that did it was culling a few of these. He didn't sell as many as he used to. And auto surplus, great for things like fuel pumps and water pumps. There's the water pump there. Used alloy once, so I thought they'd be nice and sweet. And again, they were very, very competitively priced. And a couple of other bits there. These are traditionally quite dear, but I picked them up for a reasonable price as well. So this bloke hasn't used it, so all of his work has to come off. So I'm in the middle of doing that now. What's particularly that of a worry is things like this. Now he hasn't used a sanding disc, he's used a grinding disc, and he's bitten into it all, and so it's undulated. And that means that I've got to wire brush all that out. That all has to come out. When it's high filled, it'll be virtually invisible. So I'm going to clear that. I'm going to tape it neatly and clear it. So the cross member was a complete mess. This is the old one, which I ended up cutting the bottom part off because I needed to reuse it. Got one. There's just the remains of how it is in the vehicle. Where I've started to cut. I've got to cut that centre bit out in order to put a new one in. Jason again came to the rescue. He gave me a 6-cylinder one, which is different from the V8 ones in that the V8 has a box welded underneath it, where the 6 didn't. I think it just had a flat plate. So I ended up sort of keeping some of the original V8 one, straightening it out, and then welding it onto Jason's 6-cylinder one. Yeah, so here's the original piece after straightening, and I'm going to weld it onto that bronze coloured one down there of Jason's. It turned out to be a very good repair. Box of stuff to go and get plated. There was absolutely tons of it, and I got a big tub full of bolts from Ray. I had to sift through them and see what I needed, and by the time I got them back I had a full complement. And here's the man himself, Jason Hill, one of the most generous people I've ever met. He picked up this XB, I can't remember the reason for picking it up, and most of the metal in mine is actually out of this car. The Firewall, the parcel tray, part of the radiator support, you name it. He cut lots of stuff out, the battery tray, everything. The car's rusted, really badly rusted, but the good bits went on my car. You can see that line there in the rear door was incorrect. That's what happens if you put an XC rear door on an XB Falcon. They fit, but that sort of line won't sort of marry up properly. They're a completely different sort of style on the side of them. Lots and lots of bits and pieces in here. It looks like he's pretty much depleted it, but he hasn't. And I think that car's still there. Of course, once we cut all my stuff out, you could push it over like a domino. It was a real mess. But it's the sort of thing you need when you're restoring a car, access to this sort of thing. There he goes. But Jason is a wonderful man. He's done lots and lots of work for me, and he's never expected anything in return, which I've always made sure I've compensated him as best I can. It's the padded type, and this is in absolutely impeccable condition. It's like the glove box I got, and even the printing down there's quite good. And what's unusual about this one, it has a police interceptor speedometer there, so I don't know. I don't think it's been put in later. I thought the cop cars were just Falcon 500s with those speedos. Someone could have put that into a GXL. Looking at ZH Fairlane today, pretty poor condition really, but for the $590 I paid for it, it turned out to be a pretty good buy. Lots of wiring and that sort of thing we can see, and it's good for me because I haven't got the right engine bay loom. This was a November 78 car, I think, or something like that, a very, very late ZH. Radiator support brackets you can see there, it's all looking pretty good, even though it looks dreadful because there is some rust in the cylinder. So all up for the 590 bucks, I'm pretty happy. He does want the rear calipers off the disc, which is a bit of a shame. Also, a lot of stainless mouldings, door cards, all that sort of stuff. So I said about repairing the floor. You can see there where the gear shift comes through. I made a patch, which was a fun little job actually, and welded it all up because it had been cut out so badly. I think on the Ford forum, that cutout, that paper thing I've got, shows the correct factory cutout they did. So basically just welded the thing up and to make it how it was supposed to be, marked it out and then cut it with an angle grinder. So just looking at the dash here, it was ridiculous what I ended up getting out of that Fairlane. Just quickly, the entire dash and wiring, I ended up using the steering column from it, the engine bay wiring loom, and actually all the wiring looms out of it. Partial shelf, transmission tunnel, all the seat belts. What else was there? Oh, the power windows and all the switches and bits and pieces, the fuel tank. I calculated on retail value, there was probably about 3 grand's worth of parts I got from it. So although the dashes look completely different, they're pretty much identical, even though the handbrake setup's all different. The one thing you can't do with a ZH is you can't use an XC instrument cluster without repinning. All the pinouts are different here on this block connector here, so stick a XC instrument cluster in and you'll burn it out. So just repinned all that and it was good to go. So powered up the loom, ran around it with a test light and a multimeter, figured it all out, and the job was done pretty quickly. So ended up cutting the back of the sill off, just that bottom part there. Inside the sill's all new, there's just a bit of muck in there, but it all blew out with an air gun beautifully. The condition of the car structure was wonderful in this. Oh, you can see it there, yeah. So yeah, pulled the outer part of the sill down, welded a new plate in, and the sills look perfect. So I made up a new back seat frame, the squab frame, out of a Fairlane one and a Falcon 500 one, because the Fairmont is different. And this is the screen surround, looking at it from looking down on it from above, and you can see the drip rail and the screen surrounds are absolutely like new. All over the rust repairs under here. You don't have to go too thick with it, it'll run. But that'll all settle back, and I can give it another coat later. Here's most of the hardware that came back from the platers. There were still a few other bits I got done later on, I should say, and just sorted it out, stuck it all in bags, and some of it's still in bags. I haven't used all of it yet, but it ended up looking pretty good. It's a lot further on than it was. So there's another little thing. There's one there, another little imperfection. But this car's going to have imperfections all over the place because it isn't perfect at all. So here's using primer after all the repairs in the engine bay, and pretty pleased with it. No complaints at all. Everything turned out quite well. And there's probably a better view of it there. I started sort of recoating the floor inside. Just to make it look neat. And this is the gearbox that I got from John at Old School Auto Parts, and he really looked after me. That is a close ratio from a 351, I think an XB, so it's the same as what a Falcon GT would have had in 1976. I think that's what it was all date coded. I can't remember what the codes were, but it was a real bargain. This is the bonnet that I got with the car, and it was a mess. I haven't got a shot, I don't think, of the outer skin. Oh, there it is there. A lot of the filler was coming off and there was rust underneath. I think it looked to me like it had been fire damaged, but when I started seeing the frame underneath had been painted over rust, I just thought, you know what, I'm going to bail on this. So I gave it back to Ray. He sort of gave it to me with the car, but I didn't want it, and I ended up lucking out and getting one that was just as good as new old stock. The usual crap you find on cars like this. Somebody had folded in the inner part of the guard for wider wheels. They sort of rolled it right under, so I wanted to straighten that because I wanted to put all the original mouldings back on and make it back the way it was, or at least convert it back to the way it was supposed to be. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? So I've done all the jams. Excuse the newspaper, it's really amateurish. But I haven't yet done up on the roof, so I'm going to do that now, and hopefully it looks how I want it to look. Well, this looks pretty good. I'm fairly happy with that. Got the radiator support all painted and kept it the white on the back side. A couple of stuff ups though. Didn't mask very well down there, so I've just got to shoot a bit of colour there. And this line here, I screwed up. You don't see any of this. The windshield seals along here, and also here on the front radiator support. Touched up the bits behind that had bled through in that corner down there, and we had a little bit of overspray here, so I've redone that as well. So here's another shot. My daughter was of the opinion that it was a shame to do two cars the same colour. I just had this XWXE sister car thing going where I wanted them both the same. I love Wimbledon white. It's a really classic colour, but despite it not being original to XCs, now here's underneath there, we've done all under there. What was surprising to me, that's the exhaust heat shield on the right hand side, which all of them would have had, but this is a factory dual exhaust car, but it didn't have one on the other side, so I don't know what the story with that is. Rubber bush that comes up here, and so we'll go ahead and just put them there anyhow. This one's a bit tricky to get to. Battery tray's been really useful there. This was $585 and it is absolutely straight as an arrow. Now all the places these normally rust, I'm running a magnet here and I'm pulling pretty hard on that, but it seems to be as straight as an arrow. I'm more than happy with that. So that is a perfect bonnet. I've got two perfect guards, a perfect body. There's the old heater box, not using that. This is another heater box. I've got the $5 one, and the core, which is here, is blocked to buy a brand new one for the sum total of $150, and it is brand new, and it's also got a warranty. And this is online. And this is just a mastic sealer. This is great for, I used it on the XW underneath the fuel tank. Well, I've got that in. I've just got a bit of tie wire down there, just sort of holding it up for now. That's sort of, I think we've got to go a little bit higher. You can sort of sit a little bit higher like that, but that's cool at the moment. So the next thing I've got to do is put this fresh air vent in just here, and then this sort of side's done. So what I've got to do is put it up on that perch. Okay. It's fouling.
What are you failing?
Why is it fouling and what is it fouling on? Ah, shit. That's it. Oh no. Hold on.
I don't like the cars getting dark.
So our Fairmont GXL is really starting to take shape. It looks lovely, doesn't it? A huge undertaking doing a shelter for resto when you haven't got all the parts. But something very rewarding about it. It's like a massive jigsaw puzzle. Got the fuel cap there, you can see that. Got that at a reasonable price too. I don't know what I'm talking about here. Fitting up the dash, you can see it's got the police interceptor speedometer in it, which I only recently changed my mind and decided to remove it and put a factory one in. The car was going to be a cheap car to restore. I ended up going nuts on it because I wanted a better car than the XW, and you can see the quality of the parts I've got were absolutely brilliant. What I'll do is give a heartfelt thanks to Neil Bryce in New Zealand. He's donated this new dash, what do you call it, circuitry, and there's no better product. I don't even think there's another product available. And he includes all the pinouts. And that film is stuck pretty well. I don't know how long it's been wrapped up in there. And we'll push that on. One bloke suggested heating it with a soldering iron. There we go. So we can't do much with that. But that is, for the sake of $30 odd, a terrific look. very happy. So I'll just put a little spot of adhesive in each corner, and I reckon that will be sorted. Dash lights working. Clock lights working. Okay, all looking good. So far so good. Might have to change that switch over. I've just got it sort of almost to the point we've got to come across the top, and I've got the other one close by so I can see exactly where to cut it. Well, I've filed this out. I've got these side parts in the bottom dead straight. This one here's a bit funny because it sort of folds under and across, and there's a sort of a reveal across the top there. But it does fit. It's still untidy at the moment in terms of what it looks like, but it does fit quite well. And so that's going to look a lot better than having chopped up holes in it. Clearing over this, just put a bit of silver on there. Better than nothing. Once I've got it cleaned up, it'll be as good as new. And we have some goodies. Alright, so the blocks there, we'll go into more detail about that in a moment. There's some parts and bearings, this sort of stuff. We've got a lovely 20 over hypertectic pistons. They look really good. Resized rods, ARP bolts. I don't like maxing blocks out. I just wanted to take what was necessary, which was the reason we only went to 20, not the more common 30. And going to 20 is actually dearer than 30 because pistons are more expensive, they're harder to get. And of course I managed to get those, or the builder managed to get those hypertectics, so that's all good. E51 cast into it, I should say, but the new one doesn't have that. And of course this is the crank we're using, and it's a much smoother casting than what the other one is, and it doesn't have 351 markings on it because it's an American one. It's actually a 4MA. So this one's all been ground and crack tested and all that sort of bizzo. And so this is the one we're going to use in the car. We can't use the other. And look, I am very, very happy with it. Just using our soapy water with a bore brush. Probably wouldn't hurt to go this way so you can get into the longitudinal lines of it. So there's a whole build series on rebuilding the 351 Cleveland, so I'm not including much of that stuff here. I'm just sort of going over the very basics of, yeah, we rebuilt the engine. One of the bearing clearances, or two of them, I wasn't happy with, so ended up taking it all back to the builder, and he honed, I think he honed the main bearing caps to get the clearance the way I wanted it. Gearbox, just putting the extension housing on. I put a new gasket kit through it. I didn't have to pull it apart. It all sort of looked very, very good, although I haven't driven the car on it. Fingers crossed it's all okay, but it certainly appeared to be. Another shot of the completed gearbox here. I went a bit crazy with it. I even painted the lid of it silver and clear coated it and put plated bolts on you. Look, it is crazy. You never see it. It's underneath the car, but I don't know. Being a mechanic and being underneath cars, it's nice to see it all freshened up like that. Semi-okay, because they're the ones you see. That one there, what is it, the rear one that goes along is a little bit wavy, but I'm not too fussed about that. Once the engine's in and the air cleaner's on and everything, you won't even see that, I don't think. So I had the wheels powder coated by another mob, and I just wasn't happy with them. They look like grey primer. So of course I took them back to the Hydro Blaster. He dipped them again to get the powder coating off, and I went and saw Sam at Tech Coat, the chap I plugged in the other video I did. A brilliant powder coater, and he did them clear, and of course they came out looking absolutely beautifully. Used the original XC upper control arms and bought new lower ones. I was worried because it had been stump hunting that the other ones were damaged. The car was just in such bad repair, so we're just popping the suspension back together in the front now. And yeah, the disc backing plates, those stub axles, again I had them crack tested at the engine builders just to make sure, given that the condition of the car was so poor, that they were going to be safe to reuse. So we just sort of put it all back together there. So just popping the front springs in. These are 30mm, I think, lower than stock King springs, and of course we're putting a spring cover on. I didn't have the front shocks at this stage, but I just wanted to get stuff off the bench, and so I popped them on. Sorry, they were from Jason Hill again, off his XB, and had the media blasted and powder coated, and you can see it's just a couple of bolts holding them there, but they're absolutely wonderful. And of course Sam at Tech Coat did those as well. Just putting the rest of the front suspension in. You can see the fuel lines are in there as well, and the stub axles, and it all looks rather spiffy. Just tapping on the dust caps now. They're of course all brand new as well. I'm using a screwdriver around the perimeter. You never hit these things on the top. The best way to do it, I reckon, is to use a piece of pipe that just slips over the top and catches the lip, and you can just tap it on quite quickly, but I didn't have one the right size. It's a little bit peely, but I don't care. I don't care at the moment. I've just got there's more work to do, but this is one of my least favourite jobs. Of course, I've gone back on what I said before. Again, I'm using an 11-inch single plate clutch, and they use 3/8 course bolt, 6 of them. Now this hasn't been drilled for the locators and so forth, but the standard clutch bolts that I bought were 5/16, because that's what we've got, these non-genuine caps which don't fit all that well. We can get stickers and do something with them. Of course, these are non-genuine nuts, and they don't reach as far as the originals, but they do go halfway down the thread, which is good. The original kit for these things is exceedingly expensive. Finding good quality EGR kit's impossible these days. I had that stainless plate made, and use a gasket either side of it, and that's going to seal properly. The last thing I want's vacuum leaks and all this sort of stuff. So a complicated bit to get made, but we got there in the end. Rusty, horrible looking things, and the gentleman at Tech Code in Bayswater did these ones, and they did the wheels as well, and I'm well pleased with that. Now, also starter motor spacer. Now this one's quite interesting. This is a $35 off eBay one. So I've gone with this because it's just got to hold the starter motor at a certain distance, so it's all good. Now once we've done that, we can get our lovely clean yoke. Just hoping it starts up. Parts to put on. I'll have to make up a gasket for that. Still on choke at the moment, but I just want to warm it up a bit so I can give it a change this over. Have to go and get another 1.5 meters of fuel line. Got to be happy with that. I think that runs well. This thing's bloody heavy though. Here we go. That's heavy. So getting everything ready to fit the flywheel and the clutch. The kids are singing. I hope you can't hear that. Listen to them, they're screaming. Yeah, so just getting ready to fit all that and put the engine in the car. Did we do this one? Nope. Just to get it started, and then I'll center it later. Okay, where are we? Here's one. I'll just create a bit more drag on it. Just nip up a few of those a bit. And I reckon that's pretty good. I'm just going to try and lift on those off bounces to keep it still and stop it resonating. See it's starting to bounce? Come on, old thing. You've got to go down more of an angle. I just hope gearbox oil doesn't go everywhere, because I did put the fill it up with oil. It's easy with the chain. I can gauge it with the chain better. And you can put a jack on the floor. Once you come down with the gearbox, you level it out with the jack. And you can get more of an angle and they just go in easier. Because I'm not doing as well. But it's all good. How much time have we got? Might take some height off, eh? Move forward a bit, you reckon? Okay, now I can probably start levelling him out a bit. But that should be about it. Even with the level, I've still put a jack under the back of the gearbox, or underneath the gearbox, I should say. Down. Okay, the clutch is starting to operate. Okay, just have a rest for a minute. I'm just a bit worried about that stick. Just push down again, Charlie. All the way. So I'm just going around putting stuff on. I've also masked off this little lens here. There's a, I don't know why it's there. I think it's just a, I don't, you know what? I don't know. Maybe when your taillights are on, you can open the boot and it gives a bit more light. So that, and I've left the silver on the back because I don't think that matters, and that's what Ford did anyway. But I'm happy with that. Just sorting out the interior. This was donated by a chap called Mark Stella. I wanted the high series sort of later model interior lighting. I like the map lights, and so I just wanted the XC interior to look pretty schmick, and I think that was going to contribute. So it's one of the few modifications I really made to the original spec. Just connecting up fuel, what is that, throttle cable, and heater cables are in. You can see the fan shroud and the fans in. I tried to use an XD shroud I had, but I didn't realise they were offset differently than between XD and XC. So I ended up buying that, and it was in impeccable condition. So you can see there the engine bay is pretty much finished. Just got to wire up the solenoid and on the starter and that sort of thing, but I'm very pleased with how it turned out. It's precisely the look I was chasing when I started the car. So it had some cut down custom and welded gear shift. I didn't like that, so I wanted to manufacture a new one. There is in a lathe with a centering bit, and made a standard length one. In the meantime, I started getting into the doors and pulling those apart to see what we had. Window out, and I've managed to shift it. I'm sort of standing on there, and I've managed to shift it, but I'm trying to salvage the bloody rubber. It looks squeaky in there. Much nicer on the inside than it is on the outside. So back to the gear shift. There's a completed shifter. It's got a couple of roll pins in there, and I machined the top to emulate the original one so the knob would screw on properly with the correct thread. I think it was a 10B1.5, and also put this modified aluminium nut on, which apparently is not a great idea, but the nylon ones just flock out all the time, so I couldn't really be bothered with that. There's the shifter in the car. Worked well. Just got to modify the springs so it's more of a lockout between there and reverse, but you can see there it looks pretty good. It looks high, but that's because it's not got the console in yet. Wire brushing to get some of that loose surface rust off to see what we've got left. Right, so I've got some rust converter here. Lana. I'm just going to put it on with a Lana. I'm just going to put it on with a cotton bud. We call them cotton buds. Americans call them cute. I've been lucky with this car because I've got an absolutely perfect body in terms of rust, and the bonnet's perfect, and the boot lid's perfect, and the guards are perfect, but the doors weren't. The back door frames were good, and this is the driver's side front, which isn't too bad, but you can see there it had rust inside and out, so we had to weld in new metal. Did it as best I could. It is not perfect, but I didn't want to risk buying another one, taking filler off it and then paint off it, and then finding the same sort of thing, just a rusted out sort of panel. So look, I just took a punt and rebuilt the ones I had. I mean, what else can you do, really? There it is, completed, new metal through it, and now ready for paint. So that turned out okay in the end. Rebuilding the hinges, these were, actually they all needed to be rebuilt. They were all knackered, and I even had to use some of the bits from John Harker, who donated the clutch and the brake pedal box. So they turned out alright in the end. They're fairly cheap to redo, and you can see we're just pushing a pin in. They use a brass bush, which is much better. Just getting into the headlining now and unrolling the old one I've had rolled up. I've still got all the bows in there. You can see where my hand is. they're all different lengths and they're colour coded, and I wasn't sure what was what, so I've laid out the new one. This was great. This is a much better headlining than I got for the XW because it fitted. And of course after that we lie down the old headlining on top. I just wanted to check the space of all the listings, and that way I can sort of determine if I'm going to have trouble with it or not. And also it would have given me some idea which holes I was going to use when I put it back. I did mark the old one so I knew where it was beforehand, but I just wanted to make sure with the new one. So with the XCs, it is worth having a crack at this sort of thing yourself. They're not too difficult. I wouldn't take on the Plymouth one because it's much more sort of rounded top, but unless the car's got a sunroof, I reckon these are pretty doable for the home guy. Starting from the front, of course, and just working back. And I got a lot of pointers from Jason too. Pull that boat out, whatever. And already I can see it ironing itself out a little bit. But the idea, I'll get into that C-pillar and that'll pull all that back. This looks really, really good. So once I'm mocked up with the pinch weld where everything was going to go, then I could use a contact adhesive, and of course when that went off I could just stick it back up and put the pinch weld back on. I had some pinch weld there, no one told me about this, I just sort of made it up as I went along. It's the macro suede, and I'm going to have a pale green interior. I'm absolutely hanging out for that. And we've got the headlining in too. I've got some stuff ups at the back I've got to do, but I'm really happy with it, although I have buggered up around the light a bit. But anyway, daylight savings is finished and it's a real pain in the ass. If I lift that, hang on, what am I doing with it? I'm lifting it up like that. Well, I was trying not to scratch the crap out of everything, which you kind of always do with those sorts of jobs. Yes, let's have a look. Let's get in, have a chat. Oh gosh, it's lovely. Look at that, isn't it lovely? That comes off fairly easy. Most of it off. There's just bits of residue there. And back to the interior, which Jason trimmed for me in the green macro suede. And a bolt. These haven't been cleaned up yet, these runners. They're fairly clean, but they're not spotless. And we should have them spotless. So I'm just going to put them in. Just going to move this runner back. Interior lights in up there. Wrinkling wise, we're pretty good. We've got one there, which is going to pull out with a handle. And the rest of it looks pretty damn good. I'm happy with that. And so we've popped the interior in, really just to store it for now. I didn't have anywhere else to put it and I wanted to keep it safe. This is macro suede. It's not really very Fairmont GXL, but it's not bad. It's got a very fine herringbone pattern to it and it feels like suede. The best part about it is it's thick, it's comfortable, and also if you get any biro or any mark like that, you can just wash it off a kitchen cleaner. Still tacky. I haven't done the silver on the bottom yet because it was easy just letting the primer sort of sit there against the carpet. This takes longer to dry. So the other thing is when I flip it up the other way, I can do the silver and the clear and it won't affect any of this. I thought for a minute it wasn't going to fit, but then I realised I had it the wrong way around. There are two locating pins on there, and it'll give the tank a nice bed to sit on and seal up any moisture coming from the road. A couple of hazards with working by yourself. Right, so I've got the tank in, all bolted up nicely. And you can see it's a little bit stripy because I've gone pretty thin with the edge primer. But at least now, it's looking really, really good. I'm so happy with that bonnet. The thing is, it's got a funny pattern in it, like it's been galvanised. The top didn't look like that, so it's obviously not been galvanised as such, but it might have been that galvanised paint or something, I don't know. But maybe that's got something to do with the adhesion issues that we've had. But whatever the coating is, it's done really, really well for it. Now you're mucking around, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's all good. So I've got this etched and primed, Worst part is there's little bits of muck in the primer that's been from inside the frame. I tried to blow it out. All you're going to do is walk over to where that front wheel is and I'll do the rest. That's it, great. Okay, let go. Can you come around the front? Hold on to the top of it like that. Are you right to do that? Okay. And the pain will be over in a moment. And gearing up to do some brake caliper overhaul. We've got 4 of them on this car. It's 4-disc brake car. These are the rear ones. I sort of just left them behind that washing machine in the garage, getting all dirty and horrible. Pulled them apart, stuck them in a bucket full of vinegar. 50-50 mixed vinegar and water. Left them in there for a week, pulled them out and they looked absolutely great. So I didn't want to paint the calipers. I wanted to have them the natural cast iron look because I think it looks better. And now into a bit of wiper arm reconditioning. I had them electroplated, but I had them done in the silver because I had some motorbike stuff done at the same time, I think. Had to get the new plastic bits to clamp onto the motor. I think these were donated originally by John Parnas, but they ended up looking really, really great. I think that's alright. Haven't got much faith in it though. Those cheap repro parts are never as good as the original. To preserve that look, because I like it. Now when you've got kit that looks like this and it's original, I think you keep the original finish on it. So I think now is probably time to rebuild one. First thing, bit of brake clean. Oops, I'll do it on here over the floor. I need to blow that out with compressed air. Just a moment please. There we go. All the way back, like that, in time for more tea. So here are the front ones all rebuilt. After the vinegar treatment I ended up neutralising them in baking soda and giving them a clear coat and then rebuilt them, and I ended up doing the same sort of thing to the rear calipers as well. That'll do. Right, let's take a bit of a look, hey. So our cap now seals properly. I don't know if you can see the gasket around there. Oh, you can see the top of it. There we go. So I had 2 left-hand rear doors. One had a great frame and a terrible skin, and the other one Vicky Verka. I was in 2 minds about taking this job, and I didn't really want to do it. I've never replaced a door skin before, but there was no other choice. As I said before with the other doors, if I'd bought another one, it probably would have wound up being just as bad. So just ground the edge of the old skin to get it off, but getting it off's easy. Putting it on is a heck of a lot more difficult. You can see the old ones coming off there. There was about 4 litres at least of filler in that door skin. It was a real mess. Not that bad. It's not as good as I hoped. I've left this structure here, which means welding the new skin along that top edge. The reason for that is this inside part here on the skin is rusted. Only in places, but where that brace is there for the rear quarter glass, it's absolutely gone. So I've left that there. I can hide the weld under as chrome trim that goes there. You have that lip exposed, it looks like it's got a skin fitted properly, rather than just having a cork sort of filled up and bogged. It looks pretty awful. Yeah, I haven't done it very well. I've just done it very quickly. I shot this on just to show you, really. There's the skin there, just finishing it. A couple of highs in there and that sort of thing. There was a low spot underneath, which I don't know if you can see in there, I've probably got too much primer, but at the end of the day, what we also need to do to make sure we've got all the curves right and everything is dummy fitted on the car. So we are finally finished with that. And a few other bits of metal. So we're now on to looking at the power windows. These are the looms that came with the Fairlane that I bought. The rest of the car still at Jason's. He's got a really interesting custom idea for that car. These looms have been cut. You can see where all those sort of crimp joining things are. I wanted to go over these, get rid of all the white overspray, resolder and sort of shrink tube, all the joints and all that sort of stuff. So went about cleaning up all these looms, and at the end of it they ended up looking pretty much brand new. So here's another view of the driver's one, the power window loom. It was all sort of taped up in cheap orange electrical tape. The motors all appeared to operate all right, but the rollers had disintegrated into this sort of plastic, gooey, greasy mess. So that all had to be cleaned out and new rollers fabricated with some Delrin, actually, that John Parnas had donated Richard Graham donated some as well, but the smaller stuff I use for these. Perfect. Can't fault that at all. It's lovely and quiet. So the next thing was to strip down all the power window motors, clean them out, lubricate the sintered bronze bushes, paint the houses, and of course I wanted to clean up the commutators as well. There we go. And the idea of this is it will fit in to there. So these are all got to be the same diameter, obviously. And once they're lubricated and so forth, they will fit in well. Let's give it a bit of grease, because I forgot to mention it before. So I made the mistake of buying non-genuine repro door handles, and to be honest I really don't like them. I'm going to take them out again and put in the proper Ford ones. I'll use the old ones and I'll bodywork them and paint them black, which is what they're supposed to be for a GXL, which I'd forgotten about at the time I did this. So fitting up the Braidley channels, put the window motors in and the glass and tested them. I don't know if they're in this video. I can't remember what I put here actually. I've not got to it yet. But they all worked very well, which I was really pleased about. So we cracked into it with a hole saw. These doors were off a vehicle that didn't have power windows, yet this vehicle did. I've just got some newspaper down there sort of taped up so we don't get swarf all over our rebuilt hinges. But they turned out quite well, and it was worth bearing in mind that there's two different size holes the power window cars use. Just go around the inside there. Now Ford didn't bother doing any of this. I can already see the plugs sitting there waiting because I left them there with the right spot. So we just poke that down, that will go in there, and then that has to go in there. But I'm just going to make it so it's not so twisted. I'm leaning over the camera, so I'm just going to poke that in, and it should look okay. Now that's going to stretch when I open the door, so that bit there is not too hard to figure out, but might use a spanner on that actually. Tight. So there you go. You just got to give it a good clean. It's really, really dirty. It's neglected, the poor thing. So I'm going to fit this. What if I move it down a bit and just work out exactly what I got, and I'll cut it out and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, underlays in. It's two piece at the front. I've got a seam going up the middle. It's just easy to get it nice and tight around there. You sort of know, they sort of just pop in, if you know what I mean. They pop into where they're meant to be. Where's that hole? It's there. There it is there. So just finalising fitting the carpet. I've got to get the two loom protectors for the front, so those scuff plates need to come off. It's an ultra thick black carpet I'm using with the green seats. It looks fantastic, I think. Fuel lines, just finalising those as well. We're about to start the engine now, and of course these travel down the sills on the XCs. They go inside the sill, so I managed to use steel instead of the plastic and get them all down the sills, and it's really, really good. I'm very happy with how that turned out. Just want to keep it down a bit so it doesn't go against the exhaust. I think that's alright. Let's have a look from above. And looking down there, that looks alright. I think that's going to be okay. We've got it coming up here, we've got plenty of lead for the terminals. So I really must apologise for the fact that this video jumps from one subject to the other very quickly, and that's because that is the way I restored the car, or I've been restoring the car, because it got to the point where I was getting fed up with it. Bits of it were quite challenging, mainly through other people's errors, but I took on other stuff, motorbikes and lawnmowers and other people and cars and all this sort of other stuff, just to keep my interest up, and of course it worked really well. We're at Jason Hill's place. Now Jason's an upholsterer and also a fantastic car restorer. You'll know of his XW wagon, the Wild Violet one, and also the ZF Fairlane is restoring on YouTube at the moment. So I ended up dropping $100 on these utterly knackered GXL door cards just for the strap hardware that goes in the middle. They would never look right without it. These are the Fairlane 500 ZH door cards that I got with the car. They are in great condition, but they were never going to sit right in there. Managed to get this green vinyl for the door trims, which was incredibly nice. It had a beautiful grain, and it matches the macro suede on the seats really, really well. Of course, once Jason had finished the door trims, which we'll see soon, they turned out absolutely incredibly. He really is at the top of his game when it comes to that sort of work. What do you do when you need them?
That's right.
You know, there's not much you can do. You just got to take what you can get. That was just for the straps. So the front ones, the strap frames and everything in the front were all right, were they?
Yeah, except for that one there.
Liam, a fellow school teacher in Queensland who bought this absolutely gorgeous centre hub for our Fairmont. So I'll put that in and we'll do a bit of a reveal, hey? And here it is. And I am absolutely rapt with how it's turned out. Jason's work on the door trims and the seats is phenomenal. It really is absolutely beautiful. But you can see just the sheer quality of it is phenomenal. Liam's centre piece, or horn button, it's not a horn button, what do you call that? Steering wheel centre is phenomenal. It's better than the original wheel. I am tempted to get that leather wrapped, a very fine grey leather that some trimmers will do for you. There's the original Speedo. It's showing 79,000 kilometres. I hope you like it. I really do hope you like it because I'm absolutely thrilled to bits with it. It just doesn't look like another Fairmont GXL that I've seen. And the kicker is it's a 5.8 litre manual. Just taking a look inside from last time. The console, how good does that look? I gave it a bit of a clean. It needs a bit more cleaning. You can see here, this is an Auto Magic one. There are 2 tear sections on it. I think that's from factory. So I need to fit that. There's a kit you get to convert them to manual and that sort of thing. So we're preparing to start the engine, just filling it up with power steering fluid. That'll look like a sort of a pink milkshake, which will eventually settle down overnight and go a clear red. Oil pressure, just getting some more pressure up because it's been 18 months since this engine was run, and the last time it was run was on the stand. So I just wanted to make sure everything was ready for the final start. Steering now. And it's not making any noises that it shouldn't. I've got the weight off it. Cheers. Go on, Joe. Well, we've got a temperature gauge that's doing something. Let me have a look at that choke. So I'm sorry you don't get to see it finished yet. We're still working on it. Of course, this is the 4th year I've had the car. It's supposed to be finished in 2 and I'm already up to number 4. I did want to take the opportunity at this point to thank a few people. Jason Hill, David and Michael Raymakers, Alex from Seville Auto Electrics, Paul Harker, Mark Stella, Andy Brook, Grant Wickham, Warwick Tetlow, Matt from the Ford Forum, John Parnas, Hayden and Matt Larrahy, Joel Clark, Bobby Smith, Liam Scanlon, Russell, I don't have Russell's surname, and of course my brother John Anderson. These people have all contributed parts to the vehicle, and I also want to thank all the people who contribute on Patreon, as well as those who view this stuff. I mean, I never would have thought anyone would want to see what I'm doing, but I do want to take the opportunity to thank all these people. It's been wonderful and a privilege, of course. So on that note, I'm going to say thanks very much for watching. Take good care of yourselves, enjoy Classic, and I'll see you soon.